check. Check.
You need more? Is it?
Check. Check.
You do you today.
Yes, sir.
I trust you.
Okay.
Yeah?
Check. Whoop. Hello. Sounds like we're good to go, folks. Oh, that was easy. Oh, look, I got their attention so quickly. Unbelievable. Okay. I'll wait for the ones that are talking to... Folks, we are on African time, and we are Africans. And our topic today is about African asylum seekers. So we will respect that process. Please take your African time. I'm waiting for a few VIPs and PIVs, but once they come, I'm going to ask some of you to come move a little bit in front, because I want that sense of community today, you know? They say it takes a village. I want us to start with that today from the first step. Please and thank you. But let's wait for the VIPs and the PIVs and, right? Brother needs to get paid. So it's about 11:05 or 6. We started 11:15.
Hello?
See? ADD actually worked. I passed the tone to mini me. Did you say hello to all your uncles and aunts today? Say that. Those. You gotta go squeeze them. Okay?
next door got that giant skeleton. The stakes have been raised. They're officially 12 feet high. So how are you going to rise to the occasion? Protect your rep as the coolest house on the block with delivery in an hour or less through DoorDash. Win Halloween with quick delivery on candy, costumes, and more.
Hello, 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 hello. Yes, so it's 11:15, folks. It's that time. We spoke, we stretched, we had 10 cups of coffee, a little bit of porridge, and all the ital and vital food that we usually have from back home, you know. We made sure it was not sandwiches today. Hint, hint, City Hall. Anyways, as I said, I wanted today to be more of a community feeling. So whoever is at the back, please, if you see an empty seat in front of you, please take the seat that's in front of you. Can we do that? Please and thank you. And I shall wait, and there's going to be an awkward silence, but I will not speak until you move. Take another 2-3 minutes. You sure it's not a bad one?
I don't need no other body. I don't need no other body. Only you to hold my body. Only you to hold my body. I wanna start to my show one night. You say hard, but you say right. How can you believe that you're still in my sight? But the way you be goes to dream me more. I don't need no other body. I don't need no other body. Only you to hold my body. Only you to hold my body. I don't need no other body. I don't need no other body. Only you to hold my body. Only you to hold my body.
Check, 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 check. DJ, what happened? I was ready to do my exercise. Play that back. Oh. Oh, hey, come on. Hey, come on. Yes. Thank you, DJ. Thank you, thank you. Folks, are we ready? Are we ready? I don't think so. Hold on. Go. 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 Man, folks are tired. One long week, huh? All right, let's start this. I'm going to try. Endet aderacho. Selam na chehu. Ekwan dehenam etachu. Etachu. Whatever you said. I'm trying. Hold on. Mugamba mutei. Mutia. Hey, Africans in the house. Oh my goodness. Muraho. Hey, I like this. Akwaba. Yes? Okay, that's a Ghana. And I know there's some North Africans here, so I will say, Marhaba. Thank you. Oh, I actually got a report. Oof, Africans in the building. And for my East Coasters who speak Swahili, like I do, Karibu. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Yes? Yoruba in the house. Yeah. I like this. So welcome, everybody. And I want to start first saying I want to thank the Creator for bringing us all together. Beautiful, beautiful people. Beautiful, beautiful people. This is what Africa is. It's a village, right? We have babies in the back and children. We have young people, abled, disabled. We have people in their mid-ages. We have young, we have old. We have the really young like myself, right? No gray hairs. But today, today we're going to talk about how we continue to build this village. So I've had the privilege to work with some of the most brilliant African minds I've met in the last, I don't know, almost 30 years that I've lived in Canada. And I am proud to say I am the child of the village. A lot of people in here, the ones that do know me since I was this. Some of them used to tell me, hey, enough in the corner. Go back in the rec room. They're laughing at the back. But I hope I've made them proud today, you know? Today I'm here. We've been to weddings together. We've been to funerals together. Young and old. It's a village. So without further ado, somebody who's going to pull our energy up our fearless leader, who needs no introduction, Kizito, and please tell me your last name. Afrikaans. Introduce yourself again, please.
Thank you so much. Kizito Musabimana.
Musalimana.
No, V. Musabimana.
Musabimana.
Yes. Thank you. You got it. And as as a way of introducing our culture, I would say Mwiriwe, Mwaramutse, Murahoneza. That's our greetings in Kinyarwanda, as a born and raised Rwandan, proud African, proud black man. Just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. It's Friday. Many of you could be at work, but you're here. And we are happy, we are proud, and we look forward to hearing from you. And then also to share some of what we've been up to. I am, as I just said, my name is Kizito Musabimana. I'm the founder and executive director of the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center. But today and in the last year, my hat and what I am actually been busy doing is the work with the African Canadian Collective, and I'm the current chair. We have about 20 organizations in that collective. Majority of, actually all of the collective members were central to responding to the crisis last summer. You'll hear from our brother, Pastor Eddie, who is one of the church leaders that housed, we still don't know the number exactly, the maximum, but I know that some folks housed thousands, hundreds. Overall, I would say, if I could say, maybe estimate would be around 3,000 people that we housed in a course of less than 6 months, because we've since been working with the city and other federal departments to move people into hotels and which is a bandit, as you would hear. It's not where we want our people to be going. We want people to be housed. We want people to receive support. We want people to be a member, be part of the village, and not be out there in whatever Niagara Falls, Windsor, and everywhere. I just wanted to say once again, thank you, and let you know that, yes, we are coming here to share our voice. We are coming here to hear from your concerns and your challenges. But we are also here to celebrate some wins. We've been, as much as we've been in the trenches and fighting and trying to get solutions for the refugee claimants, African refugee claimants and others, we've also found support. We found support from organizations, black-led organizations. Again, you're gonna be hearing from my elder, my brother, my friend, Emmanuel Melis, on some of the support that we've received. We've also received support from foundations, and we are right now, as we speak, we are looking at implementing solutions like transitional housing, not funded by any government level, but it is just a model. And what we're hoping for is that we, working with the refugee claimants and newcomers, are able to create solutions that can actually address the challenges that Canada is facing when it comes to housing. Because I think what we hear often is, oh, the migrants and refugees are coming into this country, taking our jobs. Well, we want to shift that narrative, because we are saying, not only are we going to help house the people that need housing, but we're also providing you solutions that other Canadians can implement. So we are really looking forward to sharing that with you. We apologize, and maybe I should have started there. We've been trying to troubleshoot some of these wonderful equipments here, but what I'm being told by the folks at Spaces is that they had another group here, and some of the traditional, you just come and plug, was kind of moved, and we are trying to fix it, but we'll move. We don't need screens. It was really just to show you what we are doing, but there wasn't anything prepared to present to you anyways, but it's always good to have that. So we'll move forward. We are here to hear from you. We are here to share with you. But all in all, to say, we welcome you. And also to let you know, my organization actually has a home upstairs. We have a community hub. It is called the African Canadian Village Hub, which is a part of the work we're doing around affordable housing. So if any of you, especially newcomers, if you need a place to work, and whether you have a computer or not, in about 3 weeks, we'll be opening. You could come and just use the place. We have mental health space there. we would have everything that you would need to be able to do the work. And when we talk about looking for employment, working with legal support, and again, as I said, where's my brother? The work that the African Canadian Collective is doing is also going to be resolving a lot of the challenges. So we're talking about wraparound support from legal, food security, housing, we're a shelter, because we're also talking to the city to implement the Black-run shelter. We should not be just leaning and waiting for other organizations to do the work that we should be doing. So we are working with the city of Toronto to implement a Black-run shelter. We've been working with Peel and other folks to do the same there, so we are hoping to continue pushing, and eventually you would have, yes, the Evers and the Margarets, but you will have an African Canadian collective shelter where people can come and receive culturally catered services. No sandwiches in shelters. We want to have some soup and
Porridge.
and some matokes.
Mandazi.
There you go.
Chapati.
Thank you. So that's what we're working on. This journey is long. We are patient, and as I said, there are wins here, there are fights we have to continue fighting, but all in all, we will be needing your help, we will need your voice, we will need your support. We'll be wanting you to be part of this journey as well. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to my brother for the program.
Didn't I tell you, brilliant minds? 5 minutes and he blew my mind. Okay, without further ado, we're going to do an African ritual that has existed for thousands of years, not even hundreds of years when I really look at it. And I wish to do some research in terms of how long ago and how these practices have been before they say the white man came to Africa with rifles and Bibles. So before that. And Islam the same way. They say Islam came in with swords and lords, and so before all of that, we had culture, we had rituals, we believed in God, and we still do believe in God. And so I am going to ask to bless the space. We are on indigenous land, so we do indigenous things, the indigenous culture. This is indigenous to us. Yeah? So Sister Janelle, please. Sister Shanette, please. If you could just take 2 seconds to tell them what exactly is happening, and she's the one who taught me this stuff, by the way.
Well, Ago, Ago, Ago. So I learned to pour in the Twi tradition of the Akan people. And so this is just, the indigenous people of this country call it a water ceremony because we use water when we pour. However, a libation is alcohol or water because alcohol is a way of cleansing and it pleases the ancestors. So in the African tradition that we would all know and celebrate in different ways across the continent, it's a call and response. So we know that this is not a performance, it's something that you're expected to participate in. So that's why the call and response is the beginning. Ago, I have something to say. Ame, I am listening. And so as I pour, I put some cups here only because I saw our beautiful plant is probably overwatered because the yellow leaves are an indication of that. So I don't want to put more water into the plant, but what I will do is I've put some cups here so the plant is here symbolically, and then I will go and take the water outside and put it into the ground, just so that you know what's happening here. It's kind of a plant illusion happening, okay? All right, so we're gonna use water, yeah. Sure. So if you don't mind, in the spirit of being, a cleansing experience, could we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth and just ground our bodies in the moment? And I'm going to ask you, this last breath that you breathe, I want you to take in goodness, love, all of the good intentions for our gathering today. And I want you to breathe out the idea of negativity, of anti-black racism, of hardship, of all of the things that we carry with us and that we brought into this room. Let's let them go. So breathe in the goodness, the good intention, the reason that we're here. Breathe out the pain, the suffering, the consistent anti-black racism. Woo! Gone. So now, let's go. Sure. So, oh yeah, one other thing I have to teach you. Nsa. Where are my Ghanaian people?
Part-time.
Okay, part-time. Part-time Ghanaians. Nsa. Drink and quench your thirst.
Yes.
Okay. Jinyame.
Insa.
Nyang Kompong.
Insa.
Obaje.
Insa.
Anansi Kokurutu.
Insa.
Asaseya.
Insa.
Mother Earth, the giver and sustainer of all life. As all the mothers nurture and sustain our lives, we give thanks for the earth, for its bounty, for the food that was prepared here today that nourished our bodies. For that, we thank the earth and we say thank you for all that you have given. Nananom Samanfo. To the ancestors, it is I, Abena Janelle, calling today. I am calling on behalf of the gathering here, the gathering of people from all across the continent of Africa. I'm calling on behalf of those who were brought to other parts of the world against their will and who have reclaimed their identity, who are reclaiming their name, who are reclaiming their language, and who are reaching back on that important journey in order to move us forward together as one unified African people. Nsa. And so as we are gathered here today, we come together to discuss some unfortunate events that have occurred recently, but we see them as being part of the long history of unfortunate events that interrupt our progress but never stop us from progressing. And so we know that we will succeed, that we will be victorious. And so we call on the names of our ancestors who have led us to victory in the past. We call on the names of our ancestors who inspire our actions today. And I better get up because I can't bend down for so long. And so,
Sister G, there's a chair behind you.
how about we do it this way?
Yes, or you can sit down.
There's a chair behind you.
It's okay, it's okay. I just can't bend over for so long. I can stand up. So let us call the names of those ancestors who inspire us to be here today.
Malcolm X.
Nsa. 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 Nsa.
Kwame Nkrumah.
Nsa. 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 Nsa.
Eva Smith.
Nsa. 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 Franz Fanon.
Insa.
My grandmother, Iris Thomas. Nsa.
My grandmother Sahali.
Nsa. 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 Already called. Nsa. Nsa. Already called.
MLK.
Already called. So we say thank you, and to all those whose names remain on the tip of our tongues and in our hearts, the ones that we will remember immediately after I finish pouring, we just say, drink and quench your thirst. Nsa, nsa, nsa. And if I have said anything in this space that offends anyone, it is not by intention. And so we ask for forgiveness before we start, because our intention towards each other is good. And so with that spirit, with the spirit of the ancestors, with the knowledge that we walk with our ancestors, let us begin. Monica Sai, it is finished, and it is good. Monica Sai. You need to clap loudly.
Yeah, and then I'm supposed to introduce Sister Janelle after that. Just one quick second as we move stuff around. The panelists. Thank you, brother. Hello. Okay, so let's get ready to rumble. No, don't get carried away, bro. Okay, introducing the panelists. In the left corner with his red short. I get carried away too early. His name is Emmanuel Melis. Brother Emmanuel, you know, he reminds me of, before even I get to his bio here, there's an African saying, you know, they say when a senior or elder passes away, it's like you've burnt a whole library. And every word that comes out of his mouth when he speaks reminds me of that. It's like, wow, elder, the amount of knowledge and information you have. Oh, one day I want to be just like you. So Mr. Emmanuel Melis, a man, brings more than 28 years of management and senior management experience in various subsectors of the nonprofit sector. Settlement and immigration, community health, social services and community development, and funding, and sector capacity. A man was on the senior management team at United Way of Toronto. For those who don't know anyone from United Way, somebody used to be a director back there. And then, and the director of programs and capacity building, where he led the development of the organizational capacity building unit and was responsible for leading the introduction of several innovative and creative leadership, capacity building, evaluation, and granting programs aimed at building various capacities of not-for-profit agencies and communities in Toronto. Please give a big hand to Mr. Emmanuel Melis. Yes, Elder, when you, you are special. You are special. And then there's this other one. Boy, I have privilege. Privilege, I tell you. And he's a pastor. Reminds me of the Lord. Yeah? This man, not only is he, reminds me of the Lord, but he does it in this militant way. With swag for days. Pastor Jumba identifies as a Ugandan Canadian, Christian, husband of one wife, no, it's just we had a conversation earlier about African men and father of 3 children. I'm almost there. He is a servant leader at heart and ordained minister and registered psychotherapist. See the privileges I have? He has over 20 solid years of passionately doing managerial and frontline work in the social work, mental health field, child welfare, clergy work, and social justice. He has worked with excluded families and individuals with special needs in Canada and in Uganda. This work didn't start here. He is passionate about finding the best in every human person and process. He dares daily to learn and unlearn. Something that I've started to learn to unlearn, if that makes sense. Elder, the way you rub on me, I didn't even see this. He dares daily to learn, unlearn, relearn, to do and be better, professionally and personally. Folks, please give a big hand to Pastor Eddie Jumba. Okay. Oh, you see, it's Sister Jizzle time now, and she says, please don't read the bio. Stop wasting time. They know who I am. You see these big shots? Oh, God. Like I've said, I've done this work for 30 years, and Janelle is an executive with over 30 years of leadership. So when I was telling you guys about when these folks know me from AHI, of leadership experience in the not-for-profit sector, most recently in the position of Vice President of Vibrant Communities and Poverty Reduction at the Neighborhood Group in Toronto, as well as a former regional director at UNICEF Ontario. Sister Janelle has a breadth of experience successfully leading innovative organizational initiatives to address a range of important issues that impact the well-being of children and youth all over the world. Folks, this bio is so long. Janelle is eager to take on the challenge of moving the work of YRCS forward to better support our diverse community. A big hand, Janelle Skirt. Lastly, but not least, Mama Kemi. Her bio like twice the size. Ms. Jacobs became the executive director of Delta Family in 2014 with over 20 years of community involvement and community development. Kemi has been a leader in the non-governmental and public sector, serving as the president of the Canadian Council for Refugees, executive director of Culture-Linked Settlement Services, chairperson of the National Anti-Racism Council of Canada, director of housing at Toronto Community Housing, chair of the board at CAN, whatever that means. Her volunteer works have included works on rites of passage programs and human trafficking. Human trafficking, holy! As well, I know these people, but not this detailed, as well as a personal initiative of self-hate and self-love in the African community. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Kemi Jacobs. And I promise this, the moderator, the last person. The brains and the bronze behind all of this. They just put the good looks now, right? Miss Jeanette Martin.
Thank you so much, Isa. Thank you, everybody. I'm so excited to get going with our panelists. But before I do, I just wanted to share the land acknowledgement, just to start our day, just to acknowledge the land that we're on. Sorry, I didn't just grab my glasses. Today, we stand on traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous and First Nations people. We respect the enduring strength of our Indigenous brothers and sisters and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. as they continue their efforts towards reconciliation and healing from the past horrors of residential schools, treaty wars, and discrimination. We walk with you, beside you, and behind you in peace and harmony. We mourn the deaths of the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and we mourn the lives of the thousands of young children whose graves the earth has eased to the surface. And we pray for those who are still missing and unfound. As we gather here today, we will respect the land on which we stand, the air which we breathe, the waterways that bring forth life, the skies that provide a canopy for us, the animals that roam on earth below and in the skies. The Haudenosaunee philosophy states that words, work, and actions should reflect on the 7 generations before us and the 7 that come after us. So let us consider what we do today for the 7 that are yet to come. So it is within that spirit that we pledge to work together, to be thoughtful stewards of this land, and remember the sacrifices of our Indigenous leaders and ancestors. Miigwech. Thank you, everybody. So, let's get started. And just for some housekeeping, the washrooms are just through these doors at the back. Men on the left, ladies on the right. Feel free to get up and help yourselves to refreshments as we go through the day. Lunch will be served a bit later, just about after 1:30-ish. And while we have the panelists answering questions, that we try to create a real interesting conversation around all of the issues, as many as we could really put into this time together. You will have time to ask the panelists questions during our Q&A. So please take notes. There's space within those programs to write notes so that when we open up the floor, you can ask questions to our panelists. So welcome. Let's begin.
Jeanette, before you begin, who has the first question? No worries, take your time. Oh, you see? You did it perfectly.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to start on my right and just going through to the left. And our first panelist and speaker is Kemi Jacobs. And the first question we're going to discuss is gaps in support systems for African asylum seekers. So if you're representing a sector service agency, if you work in settlement or within a Black-led organization or otherwise, I'm sure that you've been seeing the gaps in support services, because when the crisis happened, let's be frank, Canada was not ready. Toronto was not ready. The province was not ready. So we know there are gaps. So let's discuss some of those. So the question that I'm posing to you, Kemi, is, how can Ontario's social and support systems be restructured to better address the unique challenges faced by African asylum seekers? And what role can Black-led community organizations play in this restructuring?
Thanks, Jeanette. Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I think this is a really important discussion, and while we have some knowledge and expertise, you also have lots of lived experience and expertise, so I think it'll be a conversation as opposed to us speaking at you. I think it's really critical that you start by looking at what exists on the ground. And as Jeanette said, when this crisis happened, basically, you know, when you catch somebody with their pants down, that was Toronto. And for me, what was really uplifting was how community, how Black community particularly, just basically pulled up those pants. Where there were no pants, our community found diapers, whatever, and we basically made it happen. So when you're looking at what are the gaps, I think a really good place to look at is, what did we do? What did we as community do? I am just awed by Black community. The faith, I mean, I am not a churchgoer, Pastor Eddie. I am not religious. But I criticize churches all the time. But I have to say, let me do the Nigerian. Everybody remembers Brother Kala. You know, he would greet you and go right down. Well, basically, I do that to you. Because the church community really showed who they were. They connected, They found resources where, I mean, Nadine had a restaurant. Her restaurant became a shelter. So they found ways to fill those gaps. But that in itself identified what some of those huge gaps were. And the huge gap is in housing. I mean, I'm looking at the statements here. I came to Canada, I saw hope. Another one says, I just want to live my life. So basically, one of the huge gaps is in housing. And North America tends to be very bureaucratic, and all of our countries have been colonized by one white power or another, so we tend to be bureaucratic as well. But the hoops that people have to jump through to get basic needs met are really untenable. So one of the key things, and I see the African Canadian collective, in terms of what they want, is a black-led shelter, a black-run shelter. And for me, that is critical. And I mean, normally the city wants no part of that. They have a shelter system, and you have to go through the roofs, and basically I know I have 3 minutes, so when I have 1 minute more, tell me. So when you go through, basically there can't be one for black people only, because they have to use a system. There's a waiting system. People have been waiting for for years to get through. But when we have African asylum seekers sleeping on the streets of Toronto, we need to find new solutions. And one of those solutions is a black-run shelter. And why a black-run shelter? Because at our AGM yesterday, Delta Family, we had someone speak from GenWell. And this is an organization which looks at and they've done studies of the importance of social connections. And the research shows that basically the impact of having strong social connections is stronger than the harm of not having them is worse than smoking for 7 years every day of the year. We need social connections, and basically a black-led shelter will create those social connections. It will be holistic. It will provide wraparound services. So those are the things that we need. We need a place where people can go and see themselves reflected. I will always remember when I was and I wasn't even the president of the CCR at that point, the Canadian Council for Refugees. We were at a consultation, and we spoke about the need for immigrants and refugees to be part of this movement. And it was a church model. The CCR came from a kind of very paternalistic model. And when I was agitating and saying that, look, we need to have immigrants and refugees in this space speaking about what their needs are, he says, we can speak for them. No one can speak for you. So basically, in a black-run shelter, you will have people who understand the needs, the mindsets, etc. of people, and so it's critical for the well-being of African asylum seekers to have a black-run shelter. So I think we need to keep advocating for that. How am I doing for time? Okay, 4 seconds. Okay, so housing is a huge need. Legal support, because when you come here, I mean, people come and think that in a month they will have status. No, and you can't do it on your own. And lawyers cost money, and the system is complex. So we need to have legal supports, free legal supports that can be accessed by asylum seekers. So housing, legal supports, employment. Like, no one wants to be having handouts. We want, basically, African asylum seekers want to get on with it. So we need to have really strong systems in place to help them get the training they need, get the orientation to the job market, and get them in jobs and supporting themselves, because people want to be self-reliant. So my time is up. So those are 3 of the top needs and 3 of the top gaps that I think we need to address, and the answers are here, because the collective and other organizations have been speaking about this before. So yes, we know what we need, and we need to start actually moving towards getting them met.
Thank you so much, Kemi. You touched on so many areas of concern with your response, especially having us speak for ourselves, right? So it's not just black-led, it's by us, for us, nothing for us without us. And we have to really, I think, articulate that in a way that government understands why we have that unique voice, why it must be our voices, because I don't think they're used to seeing a crisis like this and responding in a way that it needs to be responded to. So thank you for those points. Our next question is looking at the intersection of anti-Black racism and the asylum process. And this is an interesting topic, and I'm so happy that you're going to discuss this, Janelle, because I was born in the Caribbean. I remember when I came from Jamaica, I didn't know what racism was, because we're all Black. and I only felt love and knew that I was wonderful and all those things. So for a lot of people who never felt that, this is the first time they're experiencing it in a country that's new to them. So Janelle, the question for you is, how does anti-Black racism manifest within the asylum-seeking process in Ontario? And what concrete steps can be taken to dismantle these barriers to ensure African asylum seekers are treated with dignity and fairness?
So if I may, I would just tack on a couple of things to what you said, Sister Kemi. We talked about the responsibility of government because we are bound by our agreement that we make at the United Nations to be an asylum, a safe haven. And so there are obligations that we have to fulfill in that regard. But aside from the government piece, I think what is deeply needed is us, right? We have to still be involved as a community, and it, not just the new community of asylum seekers coming into Canada, but those who are already here have to be a part of the advocacy, part of the support. We have to embrace you as our people. This is critical because after the government supports run out, right, what you're left with is the history of anti-Black racism that permeates all of the systems in this society. So, you know, to this question, we're talking about interacting with the legal system, and we all know that's free of anti-Black racism, right? So can we leave the asylum seekers to deal with that without us being part of the solution as well? Those of us, when I say us, I've been here since 1969, and I came as what might be considered an economic refugee, because, you know, when they starve your economy and other things go on. So I think we need to understand the colonial project as where anti-Black racism began, right? And how it impacted your experience as people that lived in what became a colony. Africa's completely colonized, except for Ethiopia, okay? Completely colonized, right? And then we have the Caribbean completely colonized, and then here we are in Canada, a colony, right? So we have to understand that link between anti-Black racism. The other thing I think we need to disavow ourselves of is the idea that anti-Black racism has anything to do with whether people like us or not, or love us or not, okay? This is not about a misunderstanding about who we are as human beings. This is about a methodical, historical, continual, and pervasive denial of our humanity. Right? And the reason for that is because our land supports the rest of the world. We are rich. We are rich. But we have been made to be poor. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. There we go. I have a few more points to make, but should I go and make them? Okay, I'll just make just a few. I'll tell you, so the one point I wanted to make is it's pervasive, it's systemic, it's across time, and it's embedded in the colonial processes, this anti-Black racism. When I was looking at immigration, when I worked as part of a local immigration partnership, a statistic that was alarming. There were a total of 4 embassies for people from Africa across the continent of Africa. And guess how many in Hong Kong? This is the audience participation part. Give me ask you a question and I'll relinquish the mic. We need to be focused on solution And to get to the solution, I suggest that we do a mental exercise of asking, what is it that we need to keep doing in order to perpetuate this anti-Black racism and this experience that we've been having? And if we figure out what we need to keep doing, then it may be an indication of what we need to actually do to make change. Ashe.
Thank you so much, Janelle, and there's so much to unpack there, but I think it's important and vital that we remember and acknowledge what you said around African asylum seekers, or those of us who have come to this country and have been here for many years, to be able to help, to be able to figure out a way where we can support those that have just come. Because when the funding has ended, and when the government is looking the other way, it is us that have been here for the 15, 10, 20, 30, 40 years that can come to you and say, listen, do you have young children going to school? Let me tell you how to access and navigate that system. Oh, you have, your brother who got in trouble, got a ticket or arrested, let me help you through the justice system. We cannot leave these responses to the larger community in a sense that it is something that we as community need to take up upon ourselves. So it is a peer mentoring, it is a communal response that we have to be there for each other. We have to plug into each other. We have to see who has apartments, who are landlords, who has rentals, who has a business that can hire us. We have to commune together. And so thank you for just putting that out there for people who may have missed that. We're moving on to Pastor Jumba and talking about maybe a word that some of you maybe are not as familiarized with if you're new to the country or to the space, and that's culturally competent. It's a word that you're going to find in a lot of different areas and spaces that's used a lot, from schools to policing to justice systems. And essentially what it's talking about is being able to find a response to a people using cultural references, nuances, who they are, identity, whether it's language, whether that's the way in which we have relationships with each other, our communities, what's important to us and what identifies us. So the question for Pastor Eddie is, how can Ontario improve access to culturally relevant mental health care for African asylum seekers? And what are the best practices for ensuring these services are trauma-informed and culturally competent?
Thank you, Jeanette, and thank you, my very dear, respected sisters. I do mean it when I say I'm really honored to be sitting in the same space as all of you. I want to start with a comment as I get into the question. The comment is, in my world, there's a field of theology called revolution theology. Now, in revolution theology, and I'm speaking to all people of faith who have maybe any second guesses as whether they have a space in this work. You do have a space in this work. If you doubt whether you do, I want you to go and read about the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. What he was doing, if you don't know, he was doing it because of how he was inspired by the Bible that he was reading. He was an ordained Baptist minister. Go and read about, my brothers and sisters, go and read about Bishop Desmond Tutu. Those are people that really challenge me as a believer in Jesus Christ to really put in action everything that I believe. Go and read about Mother Teresa. Many of you might know that name. Go and read about many names. Go and read about Reverend Father Gustavo in Argentina. These people, because of their faith, they were restless, such as I am, to see injustice and just keep looking on. So I want to encourage all people of faith, if you're not taking your space in terms of fighting injustice, you are really not applying a big portion of what you believe. And you know what we call that in psychology? It's called incongruency. To live in a way that is inconsistent with what you believe. It's not a good thing. Just wanted to make that comment as a quick start. The question that has been posed to me is a question that is very dear to my world. When I say my world, two of my beautiful worlds come together when I had the opportunity to be trained as a psychotherapist, but also to be ordained as a minister. One of the things that I learned, and it transformed me, and I'm going to share with you what I learned, was this conversation about culture competency. We were challenged to never imagine that we can be competent in any other person's culture. So the question here is to really to Ontario, because you're saying that how can Ontario provide culturally competent services to African asylum seekers? So if you're thinking, what's so different about other asylum seekers? Why can't they just tap into the same services that everyone else is getting? So if you are thinking like that, I want to encourage you with this story. I'm just going to say it. I told it, I read it yesterday, but to the audience I was speaking with, I'm just going to tell it now. There's a story that is set in the land of Tanzania. I'm going to conclude with a story, and it will say everything I need to say. This story is about a fish and a monkey. It is set in the land of Tanzania, or Tanganyika at the time. The word Tanganyika, yes, that is what it used to be called before the colonizer came. The story goes, there was a big typhoon, a hurricane if you want to call it, and as it blew and it blew, there are many trees that fell in the river. Now, when trees fell in the river, except this one tree that remained standing, a lot of fish, as they were swimming through the river, they got caught in the branches of the tree. Now, we had so many monkeys that were able to run to this tree that was still standing. And now they watched in sadness all the other fish that were being stuck in the branches of the tree that had fallen in the river. What did a monkey think to do? Monkey thought, I gotta do something here to help. So what the monkeys did, one by one, they would go down the tree, pick up a fish that was stuck in the tree, and go back to the tree that was standing. They kept doing that for hours and hours until the typhoon settled. By the time the typhoon settled, there were many monkeys in the tree holding fish in their hand. In the eyes of the monkey, they were very proud of what they had done because they had brought the fish to safety. What monkey was doing is what he knew to do. Monkey knew that when you are stuck in a tree and there's water, you go to a place that is safe, which is on top of the tree, so that you escape the water. I don't know how you would feel if you were the fish. If you were the fish, first of all, you will feel dead. If you are given an opportunity to speak to how you truly were feeling as you were in the hands of the monkey before you would take your last breath, I don't know what kind of words you would say to monkey. Well-meaning monkey. I don't know what words you would say. So we were encouraged to never imagine that we can be competent in the culture of another person. Instead, we have to approach the space with a lot of humility. So we talk about cultural humility instead of cultural competence. What can Ontario do to respond to the needs of African asylum seekers? First of all, is to approach that space with humility. We do have the resources, we do have the money and the space, but now if we don't allow ourselves as the government, as the clinicians in Ontario, to first of all understand the culture of the people we are trying to respond to, we'll have missed an opportunity to serve them in a way that is relevant to them. There are many other little things I wanted to talk about, personal stories that have been shared with me from individuals. Some of them may be sitting here because by the grace of God, I've had a lot of opportunity to interact with thousands. He wasn't exaggerating when he said 3,000. We've had opportunity to interact with them, but in some of the things they share with us, they speak to a high level of cultural ignorance with which they have been received in the places where they live, in the shelters where they live. So I think a very simple place for us to start would definitely be a place of entering this space with cultural humility. the people that we are trying to serve, so the African asylum seekers, they know a thing or two about what works for them. They really do. But you will not catch that unless you approach them with a willingness and a readiness to learn from them as much as you also have the services they need. I just want to acknowledge Miriam, if you can stand. Every time I sit in this space, I want to make sure that that woman is seen. That woman, in the literal sense of the word, broke her back trying to understand the asylum seekers that were showing up at church at Dominion on a daily and nightly basis. She sacrificed, and I mean sacrifice in the real sense of the word, so much to make sure that everybody who showed up somehow was taken care of. She's just an example of many others that are not necessarily in this room. And I want also, as previous speakers have spoken, I just want to express my deep gratitude to all the individuals that continue to respond as we seek for services. This morning, maybe it's a question to, an answer to a question that was already asked. I was in touch with the Peel region. I want to communicate this. I've been in touch with Peel region this morning as of today, 8 a.m. So the most recent update to when are we opening the reception center, which is a solution that was discussed on July 17, 2023. It was discussed as one of the closest part of the solution to the problem. Up to today, this morning, 8 a.m., we do not have a date when this space will be open. Now, I'll end here. A white brother of mine came to my office one time, and when people were still sleeping at Dominion, and said, "Pastor, I know you don't want to go into this conversation, but I'll take you there." I said, "Okay, where are we going?" He says, "I want you to tell me, if all those people that are sleeping in the church for all these 5 months," at that time it was 5 months, "if all of them were white people, how long do you think you would have had them in that church?" Now, he did not want me to give an answer, neither was I able to give an answer, but the pause and the silence that occupied that moment told all of us to just wake up and realize that we are dealing with not something that has just happened. A big light has just shined on a problem that was already there. So there's no overstating when we come together to ask questions such as, how can it take this long to have real, tangible solutions? So I commend all of you who have come today, and I want to also offer that we are here until we have real solutions. Thank you very much. I've gone past my minute.
That's okay, Pastor Jim, but thank you so much for that, and thank you for your story, and sort of resting on the place where you said it's not that we're not asking for help or don't need the help, but enter into that space with humility. And, you know, sometimes I think, you know, we've all been taught by, whether it's your parents or grandparents, when you enter someone's home, the way in which you enter that home, with gratitude. You don't walk in with your shoes all muddy through their space and take a glass out of the fridge and open up the cupboards. There's a way that you enter into someone's abode, right? And that's with gratitude, with self-reflection, with a bit of honor to those that have graced you to come into their space. And I think as Black people, as African people, we share that. That's who we are. And sometimes when people make these sort of stereotypical remarks that, you know, because they don't know, it's out of ignorance, but they don't know us as a people, that we come from an ancestry where respecting elders, your family, your father, your mother, when you walk out in the street, you're honoring your family. That is who we are. And so this notion that we're just coming here to, you know, go on, you know, assistance and never get a job, and that's not who we are. We are hardworking people. We want to bring our families to a place where they don't have to worry. We want to do well, go back to school, get a great job. And when we enter into a space with people, we always do it with honor. That's who we are. And so I think we need to change the way in which maybe, you know, Canadians view us. We need to sort of maybe teach that and stories that we reflect on like this is a great way to say, we are thankful for everything you've done, but let us help you help us with humility. And maybe that will change a course of opening that appeal response quicker and also providing the resources that we need to really serve asylum seekers. So thank you, Pastor Jumba. And after we finish the panel, we're all gonna have an opportunity to speak on all 4 of those questions. So if any of the panelists want to go back and speak on something they can, and then we'll take some Q&A also from the audience. So our last question is for Emmanuel, and this is a question I think many of us are worried about right now. We are working very hard to get people housed. There's people that are in hotels right now that once you get your P card, you have 45 days to leave the hotel. And I get calls all the time, Shanette, I have 7 days left. You know, I got my P card today and I wanted it, but now I'm scared because I need housing. So housing is a real threat right now. Where do you find it? How do you pay for it? You know, where are the jobs to pay the rent? Where do we go? So let's discuss housing. So Emmanuel, your question is about housing inequality in African asylum seekers. What immediate and long-term strategies can be implemented to address the housing inequality faced by African asylum seekers in Ontario? And how can we ensure that these solutions are sustainable and equitable? Thank you.
Thanks, my sister. I think before I delve there, I want also to acknowledge your leadership and that of my sisters on the right and my brother. I think I strongly believe that the wisdom, the library is in the room. The experience of many of the folks that have been on the front line to tackle this African refugee crisis speaks volumes about the community leadership that's there. The approach that I take to this is to take us a little bit into a mindset that this problem has always been there. And I think Sister Junelle gave the context in terms of the colonial project, yeah? And so part of this is trying to figure out that this permutation of this conversation has happened in different forms over the last 30 years in the city. It's not a new conversation. It has manifested itself in the media in the way that it has done in the last year and a half, 2 years. That has triggered a lot of community energy and mobilization to tackle a problem. But when we talk about housing of refugees and the wraparound services and the many things that were said, essentially we're trying to tackle the social determinants of health, you know. Sister Kemi was talking about quoting some of the refugees themselves in terms of, you know, housing and employment and legal services that, you know, were mentioned by Janelle. We're trying to tackle a systemic issue. And so we need to pause there first and foremost and figuring out what is kind of the locus of control. I bring this often in my conversations with governments and funders and black leaders. If something is outside our locus of control, we need to start thinking, what is that we need to do actually to have control on the solutions that we're tackling? So part of that is to really recognize that no organization on its own, no leader on its own, no funder, no government is going to deliver the results for people of African descent. So we need to start dealing with some of the visa issues and the four High Commissioner offices in Africa. We met with the minister responsible for immigration, who went all the way to Cairo himself to try to understand why African refugees are actually growing up in the refugee camps in Sudan and Kenya. What needs to happen in terms of changing the system? So what we have seen in the streets of Toronto in the last year and a half is actually the tip of the iceberg. African refugees, as we speak today, are languishing in many parts of this world, experiencing trauma, and arriving here, not the traditional refugee that government was bringing through resettlement programs, not only needing housing and wraparound services, but also needing help to deal with PTSD and trauma. And that's why the mental health services are important. Again, brothers and sisters, this is not within our locus of control only. We need governments at the table. We need the private sector at the table. We need faith leaders at the table. One of the unintended outcomes of this crisis is, for the first time in my own lived experience here, we have faith leaders sitting at the table with social service and community leaders and talking about how do we solve the problem. Crisis, and there are many crises in the Black community. The gun violence is one. COVID was another that affected many. Crisis should not be led to waste. We have to learn from them. There used to be a GTA phase alliance, for example, during the gun violence, if you remember, that some of you were involved there. Phase leaders come in and actually funded by the province to bring solutions to tackle this systemic issue at that time. So for us, I think part of this, how do we normalize the lessons learned out of the crisis, yeah? And that starts, I think, by recognizing that there are certain things that are out of locus for us. And we must have a different relationship, yes, with governments and funders, but we must have a different and courageous conversations among ourselves. About 13 Black African organizations serving newcomers and refugees were defunded in 2008, 2009. Some have been struggling to recompose. Many have disappeared. So when we talk about really a collective that's coming now to do things differently, how do we integrate the challenge that we have? Sustainability is a problem. There are a lot of things that start that don't sustain. And the challenge for us is to go beyond dollars and cents. Sustainability is not about funding. Yes, it's about funding, but it's much more than that. We have to have a courageous conversation about sustainability. We are part of the problem or the part of the solution. We have to choose. And yes, a Black-led shelter is needed. Wraparound services are needed. There are many things that are needed to tackle the African refugee crisis. Do we have in Toronto or anywhere in this country a Black refugee sector? Do we? How are we actually encouraging our Black Caribbean legacy organizations that are doing a lot of amazing work in our city to work with intention and capacity with our African community-based organizations? Before we go to Ottawa, Queen's Park, and Toronto, with the city, we must have a courageous conversation among ourselves. We have to change the dynamic of the relationship that we have. How many of you are aware that federally we're coming close to $1 billion investment in Black communities by the federal government only? Close to $1 billion in the last 4 years. What change are we buying for Black communities? Where is the community accountability for change? Do we have a theory of change for African refugees in terms of the change that we want to see? I think many of you are aware that the Prime Minister has extended the UN Decade of People of African Descent to 2028. Now we have a permanent forum of people of African descent at the UN. Canada is trying to move things to respond to the 3 pillars of the decade, around recognition, development, and justice by pouring what? Money into the problem. That's why you have a lot of investment and funding in various areas, federal in black communities. Most of that money is drying out. So for those of you who are thinking that money and funds are the solution, yes, they are, but also they are part of why black communities across the country are actually fragmented. We have a lot of these community-based organizations pitted against one another, chasing dollars. Instead of sitting around the table and talking about what's our theory of change? Are we on the same page on this? Around housing, I think, yes, the transitional housing thing that we're talking about that Kizito mentioned is important. You know, Kizito said long journey, and some of the panelists have already spoke about thinking about solutions over time. At the moment, the organization that I work with, and I'm here with my colleague Alan, the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities, has been advocating around housing for the last 4 years, a little bit more. Some of you have attended national roundtables that we have conducted, 3 of them with the Federal Housing Minister. We are in the process of launching soon a national Black Housing Technical Resource Center. That came as one of the recommendations of the town halls that we did across the country. We have been in different cities, almost 11 cities, talking to black community leaders. Why? Because we want to harvest the wisdom of the many. In those conversations, we're raising difficult questions for ourselves and our black leaders, that we cannot alone deliver the solutions for black communities, that we need to start working with government in new ways. We need to reform funding. We're busy getting project dollars from funders and not sitting at the table using data and talking to funders about a different funding that works for black communities. That's Afrocentric. That pays to some of the things that our sisters were talking about earlier on. So in terms of housing, we cannot separate housing from the social determinants of health, the wraparound services. So where do we start? In this city, I think one of the things I want to encourage all of us and the collective is to look at the landscape in the city of Toronto. There are many actors, government, private sector, phase, community-based, that are trying to solve the problem. Yes, we need an Afrocentric and black-led shelter, but we need a larger conversations about what the governments are doing to tackle the refugee problem in this country. Not only the African refugee problem. What are they doing for the other refugees that are coming? And by the way, Africans are not the largest number of refugees coming into this country. If you're following the news in the last 2 days, the federal government is focusing on tackling some of the challenge around the Palestinian refugee issue. It's the Syrians, it's the Ukrainians. We're not waiting there to have our turn. We have to really sit at the table with policymakers at all levels of government and talk about not funding. We have to talk about data and evidence first. Create a shared understanding of solutions and then talk about funding. My concern is that after $1 billion investment also federally and a potential change of the guards in Ottawa, that we're back to square one, you know? So I think the first thing I would do around housing is really understanding the landscape here in the city. There's a lot of stuff happening around housing. We need to connect the dots. We have some funders in the room today. Let's talk to them in a different way. Not about funding first. The problem that I have with black leaders going to Ottawa, Queen's Park, and the city, talking about funding, is that they are operating in the colonial funding paradigm that has fragmented black communities. You know, folks, we have to use data and evidence and say, how do we change the landscape? And so, we might not have solutions for tomorrow, but the collective, as Kizito was saying, is working on a transitional housing initiative, which is part of its new 3-year systems transformation initiative that the collective is launching, supported by McConnell Foundation, but we're hoping other funders will join. it takes a lot of energy and resources to change the paradigm. It doesn't start with governments and funders. I'm sorry to say that. It starts with us. We have to see ourselves in the mirror and figuring out that, you know, we need to work differently among ourselves first. I'll simply close by saying that there was around housing, a $10 billion national housing strategy federally. The reason that we're involved with the housing minister and now launching a technical resource center around housing for black communities, that black folks were not participating in the national housing strategy. There was money on the table. There was no vision, capacity, and working together. So we have to have a conversation first among ourselves, be on the same theory of change, and recognize our locus of control, enhance that control, and work differently. Some of you have received funding from the National Black Canadian Housing, Black Canadian Capacity Building Fund, supporting Black Canadian communities. That fund is coming to an end. There will not be capacity building dollars coming again and again after year. We have to talk about the carrying capacity of the black ecosystem in this country, in this city. We have done this again and again in the last 15, 20 years, cycles of creating, having crisis legitimize existence. We have to move from that and focus on a different type of paradigm. And I will stop here.
Thank you for that, Emmanuel. Lots to unpack there. It's a topic that, you're right, has got to start with community and then branch out into the areas where it becomes a national issue and is dealt with in such a way that it's going to teeter down to the provinces, to the communities, and then locally to really solve the problem of housing. Janelle just wants to speak to that topic as well. Janelle?
Yes, I'll be brief just because I want to hear from the audience as well. But, you know, when you talked about this topic, I got the visual in my mind of a spiral that, you know, and if you remember when you were a child, how many of you remember when you were a child? You used to just stand and spin your body around and around, and eventually it was fun for a while, but then you'd get dizzy and do what? Fall down, right. And so I think that image is what I think about when you speak about that topic. And most definitely, it does start with us. And so we need to invoke two things: Kujichagulia, self-determination, and Ubuntu, what you talked about, working together as a collective. We need a strategy, right? And so when we talk about that, it gets to that question that I asked. What do we have to continue doing to perpetuate this cycle? Not talking to each other, not developing a strategy, being self-centered. The funding issue of sustainability is because we're not recognizing the power that we have as a community. So when we sit down, we're believing the hype. I don't know, Public Enemy fans, don't believe the hype. Because we're believing the hype that because these people have the money and control, they actually have the control, but they don't. Because government is an expression of the people. We need to remember that. Plus, to your example, I loved it. The monkeys don't know what the fish need. The fish know what the fish need. And in that example, we're the fish who are being strangled for oxygen from the water by these processes that don't, okay. So what has happened? We get the money. I'm proposing that the solution to that is that we need to figure out how to get money that is supporting the principle of self-determination. We can take a lesson from the indigenous people of this country who have not ceded their sovereignty, and we should not cede our sovereignty. You know, one last thing I'll say about that is that I had the occasion to visit a group of indigenous people in British Columbia, northern British Columbia. And what struck me as absolutely beautiful, because it was very empowering, is that what they started doing is teaching their children their language, teaching pride in who they were. You are a fish, you need to be proud to be a fish. Don't try to be a monkey, right? I love that. Don't try to be a monkey, be a fish, right? And so with that, the children now, the young people now, are taking care of those 7 generations that you spoke of, because they are going to teach their children their language. When you are talking in your own language, swimming in your own water, you are going to be able to do what is right for you. So I think that we need to make that happen. And we have to do that together and forget all of the things that pull us apart, which are the creation of the colonial structures, right?
Absolutely, and I think if we remember that, Janelle, that we are a people, and we were a people before colonialism. We were a people. Something happened and changed that, but we were a people. We have to come back to that nature, because it is. And sometimes I'll meet, folks, brothers and sisters on, wherever I'm going in, and you start talking that dialect of Black empowerment, and it seems like they're almost pushing away from it. And I think everybody in their own selves have to come back to that nature. And it may take some their lifetime before they remember, I'm African. My nature before colonialism is I am an African. And the respect and power of that, some of us have learned it early on, and some of us, even in their senior years, haven't come back to it. And I think I would say to those that are sitting here and listening in and are being live streamed, is to return to that. Return to that. Because the power within that, you almost cannot harm your people. When you really come back to the nature of who we are as a people, then I'm helping my sister. I'm giving advice to my brother. I'm trying to set up jobs to help them. I'm going to use my volunteer time to help a community organization, because that is the nature of who we are. We've lost it. It's been taken from us. Let's come back to that. So I'm going to open the floor to the panelists if they want to sort of shed any light on the other questions that were asked of other panelists. And yeah, Kemi? Perfect. Okay, we'll go to Kemi first.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to just kind of reflecting on what everyone has said, and just noticing, I mean, just in terms of imperialism and gender politics, I noticed that the women tended to follow the 3 minutes, and the men took a lot of space. Mansplaining. I'm just mentioning that. So we need to look at how we decolonize ourselves as well, and we need to take up space. But so one of the things I wanted to speak about was that at the Elder Family, we have a way of working with communities which we call Sese Woshuban. And basically, it looks at what are the 4 pillars of building strong African people and communities. And the first one you spoke to is identity. You need to know who you are and be comfortable, and you spoke about Chanel, be very strong in who you are. We tend to forget, and we think that history started with the colonialists. And no, we have a magnificent history. And we also we tend to look at ourselves in terms of valuing our contact with Europeans. Yeah, that gives us currency. We need to realize that we are born with currency. Our currency comes from our connection to the continent of Africa and our traditional ways. So we need to know who we are, embrace our identity, and just own it. And share it, because we're proud of it. The second pillar is around complex conversations, having difficult conversations. And our families have been splintered. Our history has made us quite often not speak to each other in healthy ways. So we need to have those complex conversations with each other. And it's both in the family, because our families can do with some help, as all families can, but also between people. I'm really happy to see that on this panel, we have continental brothers and sisters, and we have Caribbean brothers and sisters. We need to understand that we need to have all of us, the diaspora, at the table. And as Caribbean people who settled here earlier, we tend to take up a lot of space, and quite often we forget that there's a whole continent that we come from, which is not represented at most tables. So whenever you're at a table with black people, just say who is here and who is not here. And if our continental brothers and sisters are not there, there's a problem. The third area is to look at entitlement. Sister Janelle spoke to Canada is a signatory to the United Nations Convention. Asylum seekers have a right to services and the right to settle. So we're not asking for favors. This is something which is internationally settled, all right? So it's a right, it's an entitlement. So it's not really a favor that we're doing. So we need to understand that Canada has an obligation to settle refugees. And 70% of the people who come as refugee claimants do get status. So by giving services to people before, and this is the bureaucracy, you're helping the country because people settle quicker. Rather than let someone languish for 2-3 years waiting for their status, give them the services immediately. People should have access to services immediately. The fourth pillar is the navigational skills. Because basically, we are in a system we are in a country where there are many systems which are hostile to us. We speak about the justice system, the immigration system, all of these systems are hostile. And if we're gonna do well, we need to know how to navigate them. So we need to be very intentional about teaching people how we navigate these difficult systems, because as black people, anti-black racism is alive and well, and it's operating everywhere. So those 4 pillars will help us to come together to plan and strategize and to move the conversation forward and have different conversations between ourselves and with government officials. So I really like the idea of changing the narrative around it. I have a sister who worked with the UN, and she said, one thing that really hurt her, when black people went to speak at the table, it was always, please, how, When the Chinese went, they never gave, not an inch. So we need to learn to own and take up space and and know that we are deserving and demand, not always be asking for permission. Thank you.
Yes, Pastor Jimba, thank you, Janelle. Thank you for that, Kemi, for those reminders and those pillars.
Please, if you can time me so that I speak for less minutes than Kemi, I would really appreciate that. Yeah, time me so that I speak for less minutes than she did. No, that was us exhibiting our deficiencies, our areas of growth. Okay. I'm going to make 2 comments. First one is from a book called When Helping Hearts, H-U-R-T-S. My R is underdeveloped. So When Helping Hearts. The premise of this book, it is a book really specific to people that are in this work of poverty alleviation and providing relief. But we are here talking about systems and processes. I have to testify that I have seen a system where an individual can move from a shelter without an exit plan. Now, if we talk systems, that process there, by all means, guarantees the chances that this person is going to end up in the shelter again. I am talking about in the recent 15 months. So unfortunately, when you are involved on the front line, such as I am, there are some things that are undeniable that deserve questions, that deserve to be talked about in this way. There is a very clear system of, somebody touched on it, I don't know who it was, but the system of handouts as opposed to hand up. That system is there. And it speaks a lot to what you think about the person you're giving a handout. It says that you don't really think this person has the capacity to sustain themselves with real help. There are so many things behind this kind of system. And I know what I have seen, and I can't help but to just acknowledge that we do have a lot of things that are going on that definitely need a question. Walter Rodney writes a book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. But he says that the real definition of underdevelopment is not necessarily the absence of development. Not necessarily. Underdevelopment is a comparative word by definition. So when we notice differences between how asylum seekers process the process of settlement, how it is compared to others, I think that question needs to be talked about, of course, in an appropriate way. I am not part of any group that goes around just talking about these matters in a way that is disrespectful or in a way that is condescending. I don't have the time for that kind of thing. But I definitely acknowledge that there is a difference in the settlement process, and we have seen what we have seen, and we need to have the difficult conversations about the difference in the processes that we have seen. My senior brother just touched on a statistic, and I don't know if it registered well, but he said, no, if you look at the data, no, Africans are not, continental Africans are not the biggest number of refugees that are entering the country. Okay, then the years I spent under the leadership of Janelle, I learned so much about overrepresentation. I learned so much about that word. If the big number or the bigger number of the refugees entering Canada are not Africans, then somebody has to discuss and explain how to explain the overrepresentation of continental Africans in places where no refugee wants to be. For example, a street. For example, a drop-in center where people are still sleeping on cots for 7 months, more than 7 months. Somebody has to explain that, or it needs to be talked about. I'm going to pause there.
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor Jumba. Yeah, absolutely. Panelist, Emmanuel, just Emmanuel, and then I'm hoping you guys have your programs. You put some points in there so we can get to your Q&A in just a minute.
Briefly, I think, Sister General spoke about the value of strategies, yeah? So part of trying to really address medium to long term this problem is understanding what's happening in the city at the moment, yeah? So we have the opportunity of the renewal of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Plan, for example, the 10-year plan that will come into effect next year. So we have to amplify the leadership and presence of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit in the city. And in this process, we need to kind of integrate the issue of refugees, not just the numbers, the services, but the whole sector, the organizations, the settlement services, the integration of FACE and other business and community social services into the plan itself. It has to be a pillar of solutions in the next 10-year outlook that has policy implication, funding capacity building, and so on, yeah? Similarly, around mental health, we've been advocating for the establishment in this country of a Black mental health strategy. You know, in the last federal budget, the government has put $4 million towards Black mental health services. They have already put in the last 3 years before that close to $15 million into Black mental health alone. But these are dollars that come and go. They are services. If we have a strategy, then you start talking about funding and strategy for the coming 5 to 10 years. So I just want to emphasize about the value of looking what's in the pipeline, whether it's mental health or housing or other wraparound services that need to be elevated from touch point services to system solutions.
Yeah, we have mics. I see hands up. Whoa, people. Any more hands? Whoa. So y'all actually paying attention. Not just me.
Thank you so much. Introduce yourself first. I will. As a person who is from Africa, I stand when I speak in front of people. And my name is Salah, and I came from the Ethiopian Association. This gathering is happening because it reaches at the level of crisis. we wouldn't have had this conversation if there were a certain amount of money or a certain amount of shelters that were built, and even immigrant newcomers coming from Africa were having that kind of space. But was that okay? Even that stage, that's not okay. This crisis affected me, that's why I am like speaking right now, affected me as a service provider as well as a person. Therefore, what I would like to say on this conversation is, yes, we require these asks, like we require a shelter, we require a culturally informed intervention, we require mental health, everything. But to what end? Unless in other ways we address the root cause of how this system created this crisis, this will continue. We are having more kids, whether they are born here or they are coming from any place. And we are going to give a legacy of dependency on the funding of a government rather than trying to be the government itself. Make your kids learn about how to be on the table of decision making. At the long run, at the short term, you can lobby or you can influence your elected officials, whether it's municipal, whether it's provincial or federal, that you are not going to get my vote unless and otherwise you address my interests. The Black community is a huge community in terms of challenging the system in the short term. But in the long term, my point is you have to be the system. You have to be the one who decides on the resources on where to allocate rather than trying to like, do we need to have a shelter system or we need to have resources for that? No. This country is a multicultural country. This country officially accepts that this is a country that doesn't have a certain kind of culture or a certain kind of way of doing business. Rather, this is a country that accepts you as you are. This is our responsibility to use of it. Therefore, I really would like to emphasize on the collective to focus on the system change, to focus on the long run, to focus by addressing the short terms, of course, to focus on owning the systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to speak to that?
Sure. There's another question, but I think it'll be better if we could just answer so the flow is back and forth. But you are next, sir.
Okay. Only want to say I could not agree with you more, and that is part of the self-determination. So not only controlling and being at the decision-making table, but it doesn't negate the responsibility of the community to do the things that we're talking around coming together, because things have to happen first at the policy level. And also, right now, our community is not successfully holding Canada accountable for, as Sister Kemi said, for its obligations under the human rights. So all of that, we have to know the information first to be able to function at that level where we can competently challenge and competently participate in policy making and in government, generally speaking.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I wish to stand on all protocol to thank the panelists. And my name is Peter Omodiale from Nigeria. I feel delighted to be here, and I thank you so much for all the enlightenment. He has spoken part of what I intend to say, but in addition to what he has said, what I jotted down here, after this exercise, what next? Where do we go from here? Will it just be an exercise that it ends here with all the talking, with all the good talks we've had today? So what next? Will a communique come out from here that will be a blueprint for us to work on and get these things achieved? Then, if we have this at the back of our mind, good. So I think we should begin to work that area so that, because from my experience here, there's still racism. When you are looking for...
Racism in Canada?
Yes,
No.
there is. I've experienced it.
You?
Yes.
Oh, and me?
So when I walk into a place, I say, please, I want to drop my resume. Come next time, come next time. But when another tribe walked in there, they received this one. I went back and challenged the lady. I said, why did you do that? This is racism. When he saw my reaction, he said, please bring it. But if I have not reacted,
That's right.
so I think we, the black, we should stand up to defend our right. We are not problems. We are problem solvers.
Right.
So we should see ourselves from that angle. With what is written here, I so much appreciate it, and I believe we should begin to work towards that, how to empower the Africans. Through work, this housing, and other things, we are not liabilities. Africans are not liabilities. We have talented people. We have good people that can contribute to the GDP of this country. So let us see ourselves from that angle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Hello, my name is...
Let's address
One second.
Address
yeah,
it, address
yeah,
it,
yeah.
address it.
Thank you very much, my brother. I want to first of all thank you and honor you for sharing a bit of your personal experience there. And I want to really encourage people in this room to know that we are not sitting here making up incidences. They are real experiences that our brothers and sisters have that you would have to see it, to believe it. Today, in the 21st century. So when my brother shares that, it might look like a light example, but it speaks to something bigger than what he just shared. What motivated the other person at the other end of the table to accept the other resume and not this one, before even knowing the content of the resume? So I want to answer your question by drawing your attention to the ACC initiatives on the board here. So as a collective, one of the very intentional steps that we are making sure that we take is that we move beyond conversation, we move beyond talk, so that we can act to a point where we have a long-term generational solution to the things we are talking about. So one of the, if you look down there where it says systems transformation, so that subcommittee, all those you see there are subcommittees. So the African Canadian Collective has 5 or 7 committees, and each committee is tasked to intentionally take steps towards addressing that specific matter. So to your question, what next after here? Yes, indeed. Systems transformation is one of the things that we will not rest until we see some real solution. So I want to encourage all of you, if opportunity comes and we have to get together in this kind of thing, please show up. Please show up. And I know I have had my own personal frustrations, even financial frustrations. I was just confessing to my sister Adoma, I don't know if she's here. Somebody looked at me and they said, maybe Teresa, you want to hear this? Teresa is from United Way. She said, as this person said, man, Pastor, I see what you guys are doing. The impact is almost like that of United Way. The only difference is that they are not bleeding as they do the work. I'm like, what? And I could not argue because I fully understood. He made a perfect assessment of what he had observed, that we have these unfunded or little to no funds groups, and men, they are doing so much work. So we want to come to a place where if you sign up to do this work, you don't have to bleed as you do the work. So part of what we are talking about is indeed an answer to your question. We want system transformation. But before we get to that, we know that we are met with a situation where it's like going to a doctor and you have a lot of mucus coming up from your nose, I really just want to use this blunt example. This doctor could just hand you a Kleenex and say bye-bye. It's not that he has done nothing. Kleenex helps you to wipe your nose so you look a little bit decent. But definitely if he doesn't attend to why in the first place your nose is running, he has not done much. So we want to go to also that place where we make sure that we are not just giving handouts, but we are talking about development, not just relief. Relief work has a place, because guess what? When you don't do relief work, people die. We are sitting here, we have buried 2 people. I have done the funeral of one of those people. Died, you could argue whatever you want to argue, but in the circumstances that ended up leading to this person's death, one of the factors we know that was present was sitting outside of a shelter in the cold. We know that to be a true part of these circumstances. I'm careful with my words. I'm not saying by all means we have causation here, but we have correlation. We have correlation. In the midst, while this person was waiting outside for a long time, the person eventually died. Could there have been other factors? Of course. But this is a very unfortunate coincidence. You know, in Africa, there's a proverb that when you are the man being accused of stealing goat, and people come to your house and they see you serving goat's meat, you have created a very unfortunate coincidence.
That's great. Thank you, Pastor Jumba.
So, before we go to the next, what I'm hearing from Pastor Jumba is that you are actually creating this blueprint that the brother was asking, and that you are going to share it. But not only do you want to share it, you wanted to build with it.
You got it.
Ah, sister, you are next.
I'll share my check with you.
Hello, brothers and sisters. It is very commendable that we're having a conversation on a municipal level about the state of affairs of refugees. My generation came here as the Wynwood children. The Wynwood children came here to build these countries. The Wynwood children came from the Caribbean, Africa, in the 50s. And we are participation here today to understand the state of affairs that we have here in the diaspora. We were invited after the war to come to these countries and build these countries. We have Emancipation Day, which is in August. We have freedom festivals throughout the whole Canada. And it's imperative that we here today understand the plight of our black people. Our people are underestimated, undermined, and on a municipal level, this is wonderful on a municipal level. But from the federal level, we need to go to United Nations and make a state to the United Nations, the plight of our people in the diaspora. If we do not go to the United Nations and make this an important task ahead of us, we would have missed the boat again. We have immigration of Ukraine refugees coming and living in housing all over this country. We have, you know, young Asian, Indian women and men coming here to go to school, and we need population in Ontario. We don't need population in Ontario. We need to understand the plight of our black people. And the reason why I speak here today, because yes, my parents were the Wynwood children that went to the United Kingdom, went to Canada, America, all over this North America. And if we do not address the circumstances that we are facing here today, we would have missed another opportunity. So I say to everybody here today that the Wynwood children came to build these countries, and we must recognize that we are here to stay. We are part of the mainstream. I get very passionate because I'm a business owner in the GTA. And for Pride, I had seen a couple of shelters, people approach me and say, oh, you know, I'm from Halton Region. You have housing in Halton Region? We have housing all over this country. We have and have not provinces in this country where we can put people all over this country to work and be a participant. I'm sorry I got passionate, but this is the state of affairs of our people in this country. We are not part of the mainstream. They just tolerate us. Do you understand that? We are being tolerated on a day-to-day basis. I left my home all the way from Burlington to come here to tell you guys what is going on. They're tolerating us. We're not part of the main conversation. I speak no more.
Thank you. Thank you, my sister. And we're holding space here for a variety of voices and experiences. And, you know, you said your parents were the Windrush generation, and I salute that. And I think if you don't know what that is, Google it. Because in the UK, they were ready to deport the same generation of people from the Windrush generation. It was the name of a ship, correct? They were ready to deport them back to the Caribbean just a couple years ago because they said, we've had enough of you. After you've invited them to build your roads and build infrastructure and build your buildings, the UK said, okay, chuck you out now. So there has been a generation of Black, African, Caribbean people that have come with so many experiences to this country. And you're right when you say that it's like, what place do you have when you've made this your home, and then next thing they're trying to get you out of the UK in this example. So thank you for holding space for that generation, and my utmost respect to your family in being part of that generation, because that is a mental health trauma, what they're trying to do to those people in the UK. So thank you, my sister.
Just a
Anybody else?
quick time check. It's 1:15.
Already.
And the brother's hungry. I'm being honest. This conversation is good, but I've only had 10,000 cups of coffee all day. No food. But this conversation is very rich. And I am not going to break it and disrespect it. We need to continue to talk, but again, just with respecting time. It's almost 1:15. Can we all agree between 1:30, 1:45, time to eat? Yeah? Please?
Yeah, we wrap up. Yeah, we wrap up at 2 today, so we can do 15 more minutes. Is lunch, ladies? Lunch is
Yes, it's ready.
ready. Okay.
It is.
So let's
But
take some.
there's a few important hands that.
Exactly. Let's do that first.
Yes.
And then we'll break at 1:15.
Yes.
Is that what we said? 1:30.
Which one do you want to go first?
1:30. Yeah. 1:30.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Miriam Kutesa. As Pastor Eddie introduced me, we've been working in the trenches with him. I'm so privileged to be a part of this conversation. And I would like to address a few things that are preventing us from achieving our goals. One of the things that I've noticed, like, I'm taking us back from the to the beginning. We are not, we are looking like we're working together, but we're not. We need to work together on this. We need to unite. I've been at many conversations and many tables, and I've heard a lot of my organization, my organization, my organization. We should stop looking at the problems, the general problems that affect African refugees as my organization. I've seen that, like one of the panelists indicated, that organizations are being pitted against each other because of money. We need to stop looking at the money and look at the end result. Success stories are very important in this space. because when people are settled quickly, as one of the panelists again indicated, people move on and their lives settle well in this country, and they do well and they succeed and achieve and contribute. I've seen from many of the residents that we had at the church, the ones who got the necessary help, the necessary hand up that they needed, are succeeding. They're employed in their areas of employment, because traditionally it's been, oh, you're trained from another country, you don't succeed in Canada because your credentials don't translate. But I've met many people now that, because it's been made easy for some sectors, people are getting jobs and advancing their careers in the different areas of study. So we need to work together. I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we need to unite and work together and stop looking at the dollars, but look at the end result of what we're trying to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, quick comment. I want to speak to something that is actually present here today. Thank you. She's known as Auntie Miriam. She's an aunt to all the refugees that slept in the church. Thank you. Really appreciate you. I want to make a quick comment here that we see here today. Two gentlemen that you see standing operating cameras. The gentleman here is my son, so I know I have permission. He's one of the refugees. He's only been here a couple months. But what happened was, it dawned on me that, oh, wait a second, this belief that we have that our brothers and sisters actually have a lot of skills, we need to put it in action. So what I did was to just have a conversation with Sinead as we were planning this, and I said, you know what, how about if we connect this individual that I know, who he's new, but he's actually a professional photographer, he's a refugee, how about we connect him to the photographing company that is going to do this event? And guess what, when I talked to my brother this morning, Revon, he says, Pastor, one of the things I've enjoyed most in my work is when I'm teaching somebody, or when I'm holding somebody's hand to do this work that we call photography. So I want to highlight, it wasn't planned, none of them were part of this conversation, but I just want to highlight, unless we intentionally do that, we are not going to see the skills and the abilities and the potential that our brothers and sisters have. So let's intentionally focus on the strengths that people are coming in with. But also when we do that, we demonstrate this thing we are trying to advocate for, to really convince the powers that be, to not look at this group the same way they look at that person that has been homeless for the last 7 months. They are a very different group of people with a different set of needs. Yes, they have one common denominator. They all don't have a bed tonight, but they are significantly different in their needs, in the process that they all need to go through. And when we do that, we are highlighting their strength as opposed to focusing on their areas of struggle.
And I'll add to that, Pastor Jumba, that when you are, homeless or new to the country, refugee, that is the only determinant. You are still educated and have a skill set. I remember when we did an intake of over like 200 people one night, and the amount of master's degrees and 2 degrees and working with government, I'm looking through, and these people are sleeping on chairs for the night. And a young lady told me a story that really offended me. And it speaks to this brother in the front that talked about handing in your resume and them not giving you the opportunity. Her name is Daniela. And for Canadians of Italian descent, that sounds like an Italian name, Daniela. She's an African woman. And she said, Shernette, I went to apply for a job, and I sent my resume online so they never saw my face. And I went through the first stage because they said the resume looked good. They're going to have a Zoom call to interview me. And so she was in the waiting room on the Zoom call, and they let her in. And the first thing they said was, oh, we thought you're Italian. Your name's Daniela. And she said at that moment, the entire interview went downhill. She knew she didn't get the job. and she did not get the job, even with 2 degrees, because they thought she was a white woman of Italian descent. So the racism is real. When people say that, oh, you're not looking hard enough for a job, yes, you are. You're pounding the pavement every day, but the doors aren't opening. The opportunities are not there. And so I think we as community, and we've been trying our best to find employment and to figure out how to navigate this and be resourceful. But these are the walls that we're facing as a people that need to be kicked down, where funders and agencies that are here need to hear that this is not somebody telling you, I felt weird. This is anti-Black racism. Straightforward, no excuses. Anybody else in the audience before we?
She has a mic.
Yeah. My people, we have a way of greeting. Good afternoon, everybody. Igbo Kwen. Yeah. Igbo Kwen. Yeah. Igbo Kwezen. Yeah. That is about our identity that my sister talked about. We cannot lose our identity. It's very important. And I was happy. Today is my first time of coming to this kind of gathering. We started our organization newly. We are just like getting up like this. You know, we don't know anything, right? But what fueled the founding of the organization is the fact that what we have all been sharing here is real. It's about being able to navigate the system. Our organization is called Ebano Newcomers Network. Ebano Newcomers Network. We say so many things, but in reality, the opposite is the case. My name is Ebele Felix anyways, PhD. And when I came, I keep on telling people, Canada will give you BA. And what is BA? Begin again. That's what Canada gives. No, that is very true. If not that you tried our brother out, if not that you tried our brother out, he would have been in the job market looking for ways to earn a living. I came here, how many years ago, and have been going through the process. Through the process, they said you have to get a validation, evaluation. You're not Canadian trained. And I went through West. COVID hit, and at the end of the day, after how many years, they told me, oh, it's not West. The Ontario College of Teachers said it's another body that will evaluate me. And I got fed up. At the end of the day, it's about helping our newcomers. The asylum seekers, they may not be asylum seekers. They may be anything that found themselves in Canada. It's about we uniting. Like my sister mentioned, I don't think we are really united. Because if we all have this passion that we all say we have, it should be about how can we really help our people navigate the system like my sister mentioned. It's very key. This system is so complex, and if you're a newcomer, before you know it, you're lost in the system. You have seen many of our people with their skills, with their education, with whatever, they end up, there. Some of them rot in the factories for donkey years. They don't even come out anymore. They are so afraid to come out. They are so ashamed to come out. We are talking about the newcomers. Yeah. In my country, I'm from Nigeria, right? Many of our people now are voluntarily leaving the country because of the situations which they, you know what I mean by they, created for us. It's not just about my country. You see the same situation in almost every African country. And in my country, we say that they are jabbering. They want to jabber. They are looking for greener pastures. And then circumstances at home, not just about insecurity, because we have a lot of insecurity as well. We have economic hardship. We have a lot of things that force people away from their place. And when they come into a country that says that is accepting of everybody, then they find themselves not getting what they came out to the country to do. So how are we gonna help? Our flyers are there. We want to network. We want to work together. I've listened to one, the subcommittee on, I think, economic planning or something at the city. And somebody asked a very, very germane question. Why do we not see, on the streets? Why is it only our people that we see? Nobody could answer it. Somebody now said, because they have sponsor program, they absorb them when they come, but we know it's not true. Not all of them have sponsors that can absorb them once they come. And their population is even more than our color that come in as asylum seekers. Their population is even more, but you don't see them. You don't see them.
Not on the streets.
Not on the streets. And they are in everywhere, walking. I've had the privilege of being carried in Uber, right? And they don't even understand, they were not even speaking English. Like my sister said, it becomes very emotional to you. They don't speak English, but people come, you have to write ELTS, you have to write a Canadian language benchmark, you have to do this, you have to go this examination or the other one, so that you can find something to do and put food on your table. So we need, collectively, my brother asked, after this, what next? We are talking, we cannot say it all here. I will implore the organizers. Maybe look at organizations that are here, people that have been here. My brother, thank you so much. I liked what you said, NABC. I listened properly. We need to leverage on, I'm sure all of you over here, like my sister mentioned, so many years here. We need to bring up the new generation coming into Canada.
Yeah.
We need to have, apart from this, call organizations. Have, even if it's Zoom, meeting virtually. Let people talk.
Yeah.
Let's have a representation, concretely. That I came here when I heard about when the crisis was going on, housing crisis. And I was just researching everywhere. And then I saw somewhere they said land is $10. I said, can it be possible? $10 for a plot of land. I researched the place, and they said it was true. Cochrane.
Yeah.
Cochrane. Yeah. Does anything prevent the government from getting massive land over there? People can go there, not shelters. People can go there and live. It's not about concentrating everybody here, and we don't have facilities. We are not exposed to amenities. Please, I want us really to, concretize whatever discussions we are having today and move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Briefly, before I pass the mic back to Sharnette, definitely, and this is the wisdom in the room, the experience, the education, and as been indicated by this panel, we know the solutions here. My sister Janelle spoke about the principle of self-determination, for example, as part of our Afrocentric values. As we talk about the deficits and the challenges, we also need to recognize that there are moments of challenge and adversity in Black communities that are changing into movements for change, yeah? So in all these years, there hasn't been a moment in the history of Black folks here where we have the makings and the beginnings of assets that we never had. We have, for the first time, a Black community foundation that we never had. Yeah? Some of you have followed the research that NABC and the Carleton University and the Foundation for Black Communities did, demonstrated clearly that for every $100 that circulates in this country in a multi-billion-dollar philanthropy industry, only 7 cents come to Black communities. And Black leaders, including us and others, took that data and spoke with the federal government, and as a result of that, a $200 million endowment fund was set aside in perpetuity for Black communities that the Foundation for Black Communities is now managing on behalf of Black communities. Yeah? We have the Black Opportunities Fund. We have the Black intermediaries. We have new assets that we need to sustain, yeah? What we're missing at the moment is a strategy. We don't have a cohesive Black Canadian funding strategy. We wanted to have funders at the table, the governments, the United Ways, the foundations, our own new funders in the Black community to sit around the table and develop a funding reform strategy that works for Black communities, that speaks about self-determination, for example. Yeah? So despite all the challenges that we have, I just wanted to remind us of the assets that we're building in the community and the positive change that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one quick 1 minute.
One last question, and
Yes.
we're going to break off. But this conversation will continue. We're going to have grab lunch, get back to our seats, and continue this conversation. But one last question before we break.
Before the question, yeah.
Yes,
I'm catching a theme, and I'm very attentive to that. I can speak on behalf of the collective.
Yes.
I'm catching a theme of this wondering about what next. Yes. And I really think it's an extremely important theme. And I have to say, I'm going to say on behalf of the collective that we owe it to you, or we owe it to one another, to hold each other accountable to how we answer that question. We cannot just leave it unattended to, but also to honor your time. I want to share this with you. These are not my words. They are words of one of the greatest poets who has ever lived. I know some people think I'm going to say, who comes to mind when I talk about the greatest poet that has ever lived?
Shakespeare.
See, I knew that you were going to say Shakespeare, but really, I am talking about Chinua Achebe. Things fall apart, my brother is in class. These are the words he says, and probably these might be my closing words. He says, this is to honor your time, but also to commit to pledge, to really act on the question of what next. Chinua Achebe says these words. He says, a man who calls his kinsmen to a feast does not do so to save them from starving. They all have food in their own homes. When we gather together in the moonlit village ground, it is not because of the moon. Every man can see it. Oh, see phones. No, it didn't die. Okay, are you still with me? Every man can see it in his own compound. We come together because it is good for kinsmen to do so. So we want to pledge that any effort you put into working with the collective, it will be worth your time, and it's a pledge on our end, because we know that when we do that, that's how we arrive at those transformational, generational solutions to the issues we are talking about. So we are not here to waste time. By the way, I see other faith leaders in the room. Reverend Sue is a formidable leader in the Kenyan community as one of the ministers. We appreciate the work, but also we appreciate all the other people, individuals and groups that are restless, literally restless, until we have a solution. So we are committed to answering the question, what next?
Okay.
Thank you so much. So are we going to, one more question? Yes.
Yes.
At the back, yeah? And then we'll
All
go
right.
back.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick King. I'm YCJ, and I work with Hope for Refugees. It's my pleasure for sure to be here, and I would like to really appreciate the collective for gathering us today, and I think they deserve a very big hand clap, and the people that, the people that are behind this event. So it's very interesting listening into the conversations, and I want to thank all the speakers, but particularly I want to thank, sorry, I don't know the name, but the gentleman on the, yes. I was extremely, very, very impressed with your presentation because it resonated with your experience, and I think there is so much that as the Black community, not only the people in this room, but I think generally that we could learn from you. especially borrowing from that much expertise that you have in system, building systems and structures and policy, because it is impossible to create change if there is not a well laid out strategy for policy influence. And you know, we understand that, and again, I want to appreciate some of the examples you listed, like the Black Opportunities Fund and all that. But I also want to acknowledge that sometimes movements that create change are not funded by government.
That's right.
And right now, what we are seeing here is that there isn't enough support from philanthropists and foundations to fund advocacy that would result into social movements that can bring about change. Because funding that comes from, say, the city of Toronto, the provincial government, or the federal government will not allow us to go for radical change, which we have seen, or radical social mobilization and advocacy that we have seen bring about change. So I just wanted to make that clear and just start thinking through some of the things that you're talking about. Where is the private sector? And how can this collective be used as an opportunity? Because for me, one uniqueness I see about this collective is its ability to mobilize the community organizations. And we all know that change starts from the family to the community, and it goes on and on and on. So, starting as, I mean, there's been a very good start with the crisis. Yes, the crisis is still there, right? Because refugees in this country, I work with refugees like on a daily basis, getting so many calls, emails, and so much. And I can comfortably say, one, there is not yet equity, there's not yet quality, there's not yet justice, there's not yet freedom. And you all agree with me that, and this is across, not only in immigration, but housing, healthcare, education, social justice, you know, rather the social justice system and all that. And we all know that none of us can be free, or we are not free if some of us are not free. And also, just injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So for me, if there's no justice for refugees, Black African refugees, because sometimes, I don't know whether you've asked yourself a similar question, how come you never see refugees from the Philippines or from Mexico on Peter Street? Should we assume that there are no refugees from those geographical locations in this country? The answer is no. And I like what you said earlier, that African refugees, actually the entire Africa combined, are way less, if you look at the IRCC data, way less than refugees from just India or Mexico alone. So, if we are still the same people that are crying for our people to be housed, right? Because we know that it is practically impossible to come into this country as a refugee and find yourself in a big city like Toronto and dream about affording housing in the first 1 or 2 years or couple of months. Like it or not, you need support. That's the bare truth, right? So for me, I think in terms of the solutions, a one-size-fits-it-all approach will not work. Clearly, and I know most of us here are planners in our respective organizations, and we know that. So I feel like the collective needs to redefine its agenda and purpose and now start to think we're pushing the city for maybe, and the city and the provincial government for maybe housing and ABCD. How about philanthropies, right? Because the difference we have from other organizations is the power of numbers from community organizations. That is the only strength and power that even when you go to United Way, not as Pastor Jumba or as Shanette, but as the collective, and say, hey, look, this is, and I feel like 20 is still a very small number to bring about impact. You need 130, 150, 200 members. Clearly, you know, knowing where all of them are found, and a visual map to show that if I go online and say African Canadian Collective, I see the map, I see where every member is located, right? And say, hey, look, we're speaking on behalf of 200 African black, not African, but, okay, African, Caribbean, but black generally, organizations, and this is what we think, and this is our strategy. Recently, we had a city, the city of Toronto, you know, that is currently finalizing the 10-year plan on anti-black racism, right? Yep. And if only that was like a very well-written key recommendations from the collective, not written by the executive committee alone, but, you know, consultations done with the member before even the city comes to us, the collective comes to us, right? And then when you go, you speak as a strong voice. For me, I think that is where change begins. The Black Chamber of Commerce, I don't know if that exists in Ontario, in Toronto, or in Canada. Those are the guys who've got the money, right? That's right. Yeah. Mentorship. Where is mentorship for our new people who come in, students, right? Don't we have very successful lawyers, medical workers, educationists, and others who are black people who can mentor our people, our youth and others? So for me, I think all those are kind of like strategies that we could utilize. I'm sorry I've diverted from refugees, although that's my area of strength, but the truth is that our people are unemployed. We're here, but we have very many African refugees who are stuck with their work permits for 6, 7 months, 1 year, who can't find a job, who are facing racism from Indians and Filipinos, and nobody's talking about it, right? Yes. And when we're talking about the anti-black racism in the city, we want to see this replicated to all the employers in this country. And those who discriminate against most, Indians and Filipinos. Yes. So, you know, because, and also I'm just wondering, because we know that some of our newcomers, when they come here, they start with these newcomer jobs, right? Like, you know.
And my brother, in the interest of time, we can continue this conversation over the break. You've raised a lot of important points.
All right, thank you.
And we'll come back to it.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I just wanted to, before Pastor Jim is going to say grace, and then you're free to go and attack that food at the back. It will be a thank you to the Creator. But I want to acknowledge, is that you, Minister Isaac? Minister Isaac, please stand. This is another one of our faith leaders who took in hundreds of asylum seekers in York Region. We want to thank you for your service. Thank you for your support. I would not have you in a room and not give you your due respect. Thank you, sir. All right, and now for the grace.
All right, okay. Thank you, Shanette. I'm going to request, if your feet are able to sustain you, I'm going to request you to stand as we take a moment to be thankful for the food that is before us. And I think I need to mention, I know a little thing about the people that prepared the lunch. The owner of the company is actually a pastor who fed the people that were sleeping at Dominion for a good stretch of months with $0. She literally just fed them on hope that one day she might get money to reimburse the rice and the food. So her name is Pastor Becky, and she has intentionally employed a lot of our brothers and sisters, the asylum seekers, in preparing the meal that we are to have. So let us bless and be grateful for the food we have. Dear Lord, we thank you for so many reasons. We are grateful. In the midst of sometimes uncomfortable realities to sit on, we are still grateful. We are grateful for life itself. We are grateful for the food that is before us. And Lord, as we partake of it, we pray that it will be a nourishment to our bodies, so we bless it. We thank you for all those that have in some way participated in having this food ready. And Lord, as we enjoy it, we also remember our brothers and sisters across the global village, who are not guaranteed of their next meal. We don't want that to elude us, so we thank you for your provisions, for your blessings. We thank you for the answers that we have already received in terms of our questions, but also we are grateful for even those answers that are yet to come. So Lord, bless everyone in this room, and as we have this food, may it be a blessing to us. So we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
As Africans, we usually do this in eldership. And I'm kind of shooting myself and I'm hungry because I feel like I'm the youngest guy. So, yeah, please feel free.
Thank you.